Hey, everyone, and welcome to your favorite security podcast and ours as well. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Matt, you always say your favorite YouTube series. Well, it's now your favorite security podcast because we are expanding out. So you can start to look for Not Another Demo anywhere and everywhere that you love and find your podcast. So be on the lookout, Buzzsprout and Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're trying to go everywhere with this thing because, as you know, we are the security podcast that guarantees no PowerPoint slides, no marketing jargon, and no acronyms. Or at least if anybody uses an acronym, we're going to ask you what it means. If we use an acronym, you can ask us what it means as well. I have got Aaron and Lloyd with me today from the Really Bad Security crew because nobody knows bad security better than we do. And for episode 37, we are very excited to be talking with Doug Lubahn and David Schnurstein from Blackfog. And I think we're going to be talking about data exfiltration, which is certainly top of mind for a lot of organizations right now. So fellas, I'm gonna pass it over to you. The first thing I would do is have both of you introduce yourselves. Doug, we'll start with you. And then the question I always like to get things going with is, you know, in an era where we are back-to-back meetings all day, every day, why would someone try to squeeze in an hour with Blackfog?
Great question. Great question. So thanks, Matt, and thanks for having us on. We're excited to be here. Enjoy it. Love all the work you guys do at West Michigan CSA and the podcast. Been following for a long time. So I'm Doug Lubahn. I'm the vice president here at Blackfog, based in Michigan, lifelong Michigan resident. My background, I was 26 years with the Michigan State Police, retired out as a post commander down in the Southeast Metro area. Spent most of my career in uniform division, plus some time in organized crime, political corruption. After I retired, jumped into cybersecurity, spent 10 years with Absolute Software, LoJack for laptops, one of the directors of cyber investigations there. Conducted several thousand felony level cyber investigations, a couple murder investigations, etc. And then always knowing that I would end up here at Blackfog. There's a Paul Harvey story there, but we'll save that for another day. Anyway, so that's myself. I'll hand it off to Dave, and then we'll jump back in.
So yeah, thanks for having me on. I, like Doug, just came out of a 25-year career in law enforcement in Michigan. I was from Saginaw originally, and then came to Grand Rapids in 1999. I retired out as the division commander for emergency communications, records, and technology, which made me a non-person in a bunch of roles. I was the FOIA coordinator, the custodian of the record, the lasso for the FBI's purposes. It was very strange when you get introduced to the idea you're not a person, you're an entity, and they just send you subpoenas. They don't even have your name on it, and you're the guy that goes. So I got recruited into Blackfog as I reached the end of that career, and I was an IT guy before I was in law enforcement. I was a supervisor in internet access tech support when modems were really loud and slow, and Windows 95 was being rolled out. So it was funny, as much as I hadn't thought I'd work for a startup, I sort of worked for a startup right after I got out of the startup phase in 1995. That didn't really dawn on me until many years later. So I got to do some fun stuff in law enforcement for a long time, but I kept getting dragged back into administrative services and stuff and got promoted too many times. But got contacted by Doug, who I didn't know when he was in law enforcement, and we never crossed paths, even though we live not far apart from each other in the Saginaw area at times, and jumped ship about 8 months ago. So yeah. Nice. And I'll let Doug take your first answer to your question.
Yeah. It's interesting though, when you mentioned of like humans becoming non-human or what, right? At the same, or a non-identity at the same time, Aaron and Lloyd, you and I we've had conversations lately about how like we're trying to take non-people and make them an identity. So while we are dehumanizing humans, we are actually trying to humanize our technology. So that's interesting.
That's one of my questions will be around how do we handle robot identity and automation? I got some real world use cases for you.
Yeah. So, all right. So Doug, to you, why Blackfog?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And honestly, a really simple answer is the fact that as an industry, and this was why Blackfog was created, this is part of the Paul Harvey story. But it goes back to my time at Absolute, and our CEO and founder here at Blackfog, Darren Williams. His second successful startup was purchased and acquired by Absolute. Darren stayed in touch, loved what we did at our team, at the cyber investigations team, which was made up of a group of law enforcement officers from all around the world. We had successful investigations like in 115 countries, very powerful, service that we offered. So we started seeing the fact that the bad guys, this is like, say, 2010, 2012-ish, the bad guys really stopped caring about stealing the devices, because the devices really, the prices had come down, the device, even on the black market, they weren't getting much for them. But at the same time, HIPAA had recently become enforceable. Dark web healthcare records were going upwards of $100, $150 per record. We all know the value on the dark web was just going insane. So I'll never forget the phone calls, but Darren stayed in touch with both myself as one of the directors and then our vice president. And the call is, we started talking about this topic. How can we protect the data? And Darren literally came out and said, well, why don't we just stop the outbound flow of data? He said, everybody's protecting the perimeter, and obviously perimeter defense just isn't working. It keeps the rookies out. It's a good basic thing to still have, but the bad guys want your data, and the only way for them to get it is for them to exfiltrate it. And it was based on that premise that he built Blackfog in stopping the outbound flow of data. So I know Dave mentioned it a few moments ago. We're technically about a 6-year-old startup. We were rolled out intentionally overseas to come back to the U.S. when we did with GDPR, POPIA, certain privacy regulations, and also get it past acceptance in the European market. Over in Europe, they only sell through MSPs and partners. They don't do any direct sales. And from Darren's prior experiences with his other startups, it just works out better to get your acceptance overseas, then come to the US. So COVID kind of put a little delay to our release here, but we did release here in the States in early 2021. And, have hit the ground running, and we're growing leaps and bounds. So
when we talk about data, I think that's that term can mean a lot of different things. So when you guys are talking about data exfiltration, are we looking at like files or records inside of databases, application data I've got stored on a OneDrive? Like is it all encompassing of all data, or when you guys say data exfil, dive into that a little bit more?
Good question. So it's because of how we're designed, we're deployed at the net card layer 3 level. Any and all outbound communications go through our solution first. Our solution is based on, at this point in time, there's 30 different rule sets. It looks at how the communication has been designed and how it's built, and where, it's not just a single list or a black list or white list of the, different rules or different known, SVEs. It's based on how it's created. And there's like 19 different rule sets that we talk about publicly. The rest of them are, intellectual property. So it looks at everything in sequential order. So it'll go through all 30 rule sets, but once it's stopped by one, it doesn't continue to go on because the communication has been stopped. So it gets down to something as simple as even a basic ransomware attack. The bad guy identifies a network, gets into the network, then they have to deploy a encryption code. Well, that device has to return the call back to that guy's C2 server in order for that handshake to take place to deploy the encryption code. And we stop that communication. That's just one of the many, but that's in its real simplest form. Stop that communication. So it's all based on outbound traffic from the device.
Okay.
There's no other look. We don't care about anything else. It's the outbound flow of data that we look at from the device outbound.
So then you're not worried data can be all encompassing then, because you're really just looking at the traffic that's heading outside of the organization.
Yeah. With our sorry, Dave, but with our privacy regs, and I'll let you add to this, Dave, because you've got a great expertise on it. But with our privacy regs, that we have no access and don't see any of what the packets contain. It's how the communication is built.
Interesting.
Yeah, we don't loop the traffic through like our servers in a cloud or anywhere. All the analysis is done on the endpoint. So the only thing we aggregate in our cloud, essentially administrative console, is what was blocked. not the actual data, but what the communication was, where it was trying to go, why it was blocked, any background information we'd have had on why that destination was bad beyond simple geography or any of those things. And the interesting part of it is, because it sits at the layer 3 networking level, it literally doesn't matter where the communication comes from on the device. So firmware, like if there's literally an infection or as in Doug's past experience, LoJack for laptops baked into the motherboard, we actually see that and block it because it's surveillance technology. And we don't allow that to go out because that's not normal. Like why is there something running in your firmware that's trying to talk out of your computer, right? Like, that's just not, that's weird, right? Hey, strange, so that gets blocked. So we would pose that question by an MSP, like, what do you guys do about it? I'm like, well, actually, yeah, we block that. So
yeah.
So then, as far as, so you said you're sitting in that layer 3. So is this an appliance, an application, and an agent? Like how are you guys, like from an infrastructure standpoint, how are you built?
Yeah, agent based with a very, very small footprint. And like my footprint here in the last week or so has been averaging about 10 KB, and it's somewhere in the 10 to 19 to 20. The highest I've ever seen it, and I'm going into my second year, is I think in low 30s, 31-ish, something like that. So it's a really small footprint, but it is agent based and it can be deployed. We've got all the different tools to deploy it easily. You'll chuckle at this, but the company really follows the KISS theory, the keep it simple, stupid theory. We truly do. Our console, everything is interactive, and it's made so that, because we have clients with as few as 10 seats, and we literally have administrative assistants running our console, and we have clients upwards of hundreds of thousands of seats, and full teams. So anywhere in between, really easy to run. And like Dave said, the only thing that goes back to the console is the violations, and the defense. This is really key to understand. The defense is put in place automatically, so you don't have to do anything to it.
So then, are you just? I'm going to take a step back as you're defending the agent there. I had a fascinating conversation with someone earlier today about agents when there was a vendor that brought up the fact, you brought up agent and then was talking about it being lightweight. And the guy was like, well, look, agents are hard to write, right? So we understand that, but the amount of information that you can get from being an agent-based platform versus a non-agent based platform it's a stark difference there, right? I mean, the agents obviously give you infinitely more information, although some vendor watching this that's agentless is going to argue with me about it. But I think if we go back for golly decades almost at this point now of that agent versus non-agent conversation, it's always interesting to see which side of the lines that people show up on that argument. But I am one that says if it's a well-written agent, you're going to get a lot more usability out of that than something agentless. Again, yep. Agentless vendors out there, you can yell at me later. I'm sure they will.
I'll give you a really cool. This is a real. You can't. I always say you can't. I'll be kind. You can't make this stuff up. But you've got a large automotive, tier 1 automotive supplier down in Southeast Michigan. We're writing a proof of value, proof of concept with them right now. And their use case is that because of the electrification, the EV projects has put such a burden on their their employment, their workload, everything, because they supply all the major manufacturers. They've had to hire hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees in foreign countries. These foreign countries, there's really no internet available unless the workers go into town and literally park in hotel parking lots and coffee shop parking lots. And they know this. They know this is a known risk to them. And they also know that they're being exfiltrated just hand over fist. So we're being looked at as far as a defensive tool because, number one, it's the protections on the device, and it can be connected to a less than desirable Wi-Fi at a hotel or a coffee shop, and the protection stays in place. So that's the single focus that they're looking at and seeing all the other benefits as well. But to me, that's a good, real powerful story as far as the extra value.
So on the one side of the one thing that I will bring up from when something is agent based is, a lot of times, like, if there isn't an agent, then that's a gap, right? So if you have a device or an endpoint that doesn't have that agent, then that's, you know, not being protected by it. So talk a little bit about how do we ensure that my environment is truly protected and I've got all the agents everywhere and that I'm not missing stuff.
So 2 points that I'll talk to on that, Matt. Number one, because we do work across, you know, all 4 main operating systems, Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, work on laptops, you know, mobile devices, servers, regular PCs, etc. But we're also able to lock down the agent, and, you know, it depends on how it's administered as far as, you know, with the different roles, role-based, but we're also able to lock the agent to where the agent cannot be altered or defeated at all, at least, you know. So I think that's probably the key point that's, you know, worth of consideration. And
then, do you have your own deployment mechanism, or is that something that a company would use through like an Intune or a CCM or I forget what the Mac version is called now, but like how does the agent get pushed out?
Yeah, we have several different versions of our agent that can be downloaded. Dave, what's the one? I can't remember what it is.
So we have an MSI file that's usually used by SCCM to, you know, remote deploy. I think you're referring to the new thing in Mac OS. It came over from the iOS side. Supervision, I think is what it's called.
There's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's trying, you know, to be like that for the Mac environment. That's a work in progress with us for that piece of it. But it's as simple as you could email somebody a link, you know, and they can click it and send them the license key, or you can package it, you know, for a remote deployment tool.
Okay. And we have all the files pre-built so they can grab whichever one they need to download it.
Going back to rule sets real quick, what do those look like? Are those regular expressions? You know, how are those set up, and how do you handle any false positives? Do you see situations where something gets blocked it shouldn't have been? And then what does that user experience look like?
So good questions, Lloyd. Thanks. So I'll answer your first point first, or your second point first. As far as the user friction, user points, and whitelisting, we have what's called a training mode, and we typically will deploy a client for at least a week in training mode. We already know what the main friction points are going to be based on the industries. I mean, you know, we see, like, I'll give you an example. In the insurance industry, there's a ton of friction points in the insurance industry. We already know what they are, and they're very easy to whitelist. You can whitelist them at the group level. You can whitelist them at the global level. It's literally, again, following the KISS theory. There's 3 little dots. You click on it, and it says whitelist global, whitelist group. Boom, you're done. The user experience, literally, they will be blocked, and they will get a pop-up that says blocked by Blackfog. We can also delete the pop-up if you don't want your users alerted, which there's some situations where that happens. But yeah, that's the main thing. Larger enterprise firms, we will typically have them in a training mode for 2 to 4 weeks. We have weekly calls with them. We'll go over the console. I look through all the friction points, anything that's been, you know, because what we do when we're in training is we report on it. We don't block it. It all goes up to the council like it's going to be blocked. It should have been blocked, but it's not blocked. So we get to see what would have been blocked. And then again, just, you know, work through that list and say, okay, this one's whitelist was, and some of them are going to be something as simple as, you know, we block a lot of PowerShells. PowerShell is one of the, you know, the most egregious attack vectors there is. And we have clients that literally have thousands and thousands and thousands of PowerShell blockings. And we'll go in, we'll whitelist the ones that could be. Some of them you just flat out can't. I mean, if it's a no profile, you know, PowerShell, or no name, no profile, wrong code, wrong hierarchy, you know, we're not going to whitelist that. And that's what we flat out own. And the nice thing is after we whitelist, the rule set's applied. The agent didn't touch on this yet, but the agent is updated every 4 hours, every 4th hour of use. The agent actually pulls the rule set from the console. So it's not being forced down. It's based at the agent. The agent reaches out, asks for the rule set. You can update it automatically if you need to. If you need to, you just go into the agent with an RDP and 2 buttons, click, click, and it's updated instantly. But yeah, so does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Aaron, you got any questions from the real world out there?
He had chatted and said he's going to be right back.
Yes. No. I'm here. Sorry. I'm back.
Up there.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the behavioral? I want to know a little bit about the behavioral. Specifically, we talked a little at the beginning about kind of like robot versus user identity. I'm actually having real cases where we're going to be using automation on laptops that may be manned by a person, may not be manned by a person, right? So this is a little bit different than a situation where you just create a service account. The service account is connecting to an API. You got to protect it. Now we're talking about a solution, a robotic solution that's mimicking a user, and it's going to have obviously some behaviors similar to a regular person, but other behaviors not. How would you handle that kind of use case?
So that's actually a really intriguing use case, Aaron. I love it, but we actually present a really solid solution to that because, again, keeping it at the simple level, we only look at what's going outbound. So it doesn't matter who or what or how it's being done. It's the outbound communication. And I mentioned it earlier, there are 19 different, rule set topics that we do talk to. The rest of them are all, intellectual property. And but it looks at all of those 19. I'll give you an example of some of them. Ransomware, any communication that is formatted in a typical ransomware manner is going to be blocked. Forensic tools, we already touched on that, where if there's a keystroke logger or a screenshot logger or any type of a forensic tool that's trying to communicate outbound from the device, we're going to stop it. Botnets, we automatically stop any outbound communication that is identified back to a botnet type communication. Web advertising and web profiling, two huge things. The bad guys have turned what started out to be a good thing as far as web advertising and web profiling into a really bad thing. And that's how they're gathering the intel, putting it up for sale on the dark web, and building their business email compromise kits and their identity kits, that any other bad guy can buy on the dark web. But it's simply amazing to see. We do this test with people all the time. We'll literally go in to, I'll go into my computer, I'll zero out my agent. So all my counters are at 0. I'll then give the client or the prospect the choice. Okay, either go to foxnews.com or cnn.com. We keep it neutral. We go to both, but we'll go to the first one. I'll click on the website pops up, and I don't click on anything, literally just scroll for about 15 seconds. And the results are simply amazing because, number one, we stop all the web advertising and all the web profiling. So the user experience is sped up tremendously. Get out of that website, go back to the agent, and on average, there will be 20 to 40 web advertising attachments to that quick visit, and usually around half, so about 20 web profiling. And it really doesn't matter what website you go to. You can go to CNN, Fox News, ESPN, some of the sports betting sites. I mean, it's even worse. But the crazy thing is, all of those sites are capturing info off of you, and they're all exfiltrating data, and we stop it dead in its tracks. A little side benefit, if I could, is that we have customers overseas who pay for their data by the bit. They don't have unlimited, packages like we all are accustomed to here in the States. And we actually have a detailed scientific research project going on right now. And the results are amazing because we had clients say to us, look, we're saving 25 to 35% on our data bill just by having Blackfog deployed. And it's not only the data they're saving, but it's the time, the employee time, because the screens react so much quicker. And we're actually closing in on the 3rd or 4th week of this study. And right now we're averaging between 25 and 30% savings of data just by having it deployed. So
I was close, guys. I was close to letting them show that because it is pretty cool, and I've seen it a couple times. But we wanted to stick with the rules and not do it. So you got to do a demo with these guys, a real demo, if you want to see that. So,
Aaron, can I jump back? I'll talk on the rest of some of the rule sets, the high-level rule sets. But any suspicious address, dark web, anything that's trying to attach that comes in a normal dark web communication, obviously. Onion, Tor browser, things like that. Geofence, we have a default list. We have all 194 countries in the world listed. And we've identified just in the past couple months, we've identified several countries that the bad guys have been using the heck out of. A little country of Reunion. And we started seeing these .re attacks. And it's like, where's .re? What's the country of Reunion? And this was during the time frame when the Revil ransomware gang was trying to play nice because they didn't like what Russia did to Ukraine. And they said they weren't going to attack anybody. Well, ends up being, because we saw 7 massive attacks in a matter of a couple of days coming from .re. And it's not like the Revil gang is in Reunion, they're just using the extension. So we added that country to the default list. And I mean, it's crazy because now we're seeing Montserrat, a ton of attacks coming from Montserrat. And once we identify an attack country, we'll add it to the default list, notify all of our customers, tell them, hey, update your list. And we have customers who literally they'll lock their geo down to 1 or 2, allowable countries. So we also stop any application gateways, cryptojacking, obviously malware, PowerShell. We've already talked about PowerShell. The next couple topics are fun to talk about, but we can stop Facebook. And it's an attack that's being formatted and trying to be driven through Facebook. We've had clients who don't have Facebook, have never had Facebook. And they're being attacked via Facebook, which also usually ties into the LinkedIn attack we've been seeing a lot. Fake news, it's not based on content, it's based on how the communication is driven. Really powerful little tool there. Homographs, something as simple as changing an O to a 0. We're able to identify that. If somebody uses all caps and changes an O to a 0, it's pretty hard for a human to see it.
So can you tie this into, can you communicate, via APIs or anything else with your firewall, right? So for your companies that have, a good egress policy, I'm thinking of a situation where I wouldn't want to, step on the toes of one of my other tools. So how do you keep that synergy between your solution and like your firewall?
So we work alongside of any other firewall, but we work honestly very, very independently. Good question though, Aaron, but very, very independently. And we coach our clients, look, keep your firewalls because it's going to keep some of the rookies out. Some of the early attacks are going to be stopped there. There's no reason to not have it. But it was, again, the whole premise why we were built was because it got to the point where no matter how high you built your walls, how deep you dug your moats, how many armed guards, what size of cannons you had, the bad guys are getting in. Dave and I talk about this often, but we go back to our law enforcement days. We face the same thing in law enforcement. The bad guys don't have to follow rules. They don't have quarterly business reviews. They don't have compliance or audit teams breathing down their necks. They don't have any of that. All they want is money. It's purely greed driven, and they're going to find a way to defeat any type of solution that they can. And that's their goal. So they can get your data and sell it and get money. Pure and simple.
So Aaron, back to if someone has a really robust firewall, or they're really making an endeavor to stop outbound traffic at the network edge by any means, all we would do is slide in ahead of that. So as far as interfering with it, we would, if it violates our basic rules, as I like to choose my kids, I have young kids, terms, if it's sus, we're going to stop it at the endpoint, not the network perimeter. So if your firewall is also designed to block it, basically all we did was get to it first, and so we're not in, and if you were to find a situation where I haven't seen this, where somehow that device needed to communicate in some way to your network security appliance inside your network was being blocked, that's just a whitelist. And I actually haven't even run into that yet. So it's sort of like having hierarchical rules that you have to get through. And the first one would be us on the network interface card, basically, of the endpoint. Does that answer your question?
No, that does. Because I was just thinking that because this is agent based primarily with the behavioral analytics, you're targeting real users. This is not something I would put like on like one of my OT devices, or paraphrasing infusion pump, because everybody likes to pick on infusion pumps.
Yeah, that's a new headache for you, right? The thing is, we don't. If your OT device was operating using like Windows or something, you could certainly have it on there because we don't actually care if there's a user logged in or not. If the device is powered on and has a connection, right? Well, if the device is powered on, it's being analyzed. Any data that goes off of it, and if it has an internet connection, it's reporting its blockings, to the administrative console so you can see them. It would have to have access at some level of the internet to get updates, so if you had it completely contained within your environment, if you truly had a completely segmented OT network, that would be interesting. Yeah, that we wouldn't, I don't think we would have a hard time getting updates to it then for you. But in theory, if your pump is running a Windows-based OS, and it could talk to the internet, that there's a possibility there.
Yeah, because usually with those cases, right, people kind of get confused. The pump itself usually communicates back to a workstation and then on the network. So there is a lot of FUD around like hacking and Fusion Pump because some of the stuff you need direct physical access to, because most of these clinical systems are connecting to a workstation. So that's where, I do agree with you. For the most part, it shouldn't be an issue. So no, thank you.
Yeah.
So thinking about this pump, let's say unexpectedly they had to travel to a geo-blocked country. They didn't have time to notify IT, understanding it can go on an allow list, but let's say it gets into a geo-blocked country and they need to use that device. Is all communication then blocked with the agent, or does the agent always have a connection back to the console, regardless if it's in a geo-blocked country?
The agent has an open line of communication back. Yep.
Yeah, like let's say you're not running a VPN, you have to use internet in that geo-blocked country. Now, the agent's going to say, wow, you're inside of a country that's geo-blocked. How does it communicate out, or does that not matter?
I don't believe it matters, Lloyd. It's a great question. That's the best answer I can give you. I don't believe it matters. We have I have a client who it's a nonprofit here in the States, and one of their key level people actually travels to Russia fairly often. And literally we just coached her, trained her. It's like, okay, if you want help, we'll do it. But otherwise, all you do is just go into the console. And when you're going in, take Russia off your blacklist, put it on the allow. And then when you get back, same thing, put it back on. So that makes it much simpler. So back up one click. Great comment and discussion as far as, the communications. I purposely have a second laptop that is sitting here on my desk, and I haven't logged into it in probably 3 months, but it's been signed on. And that laptop continues to get attacks just through LinkedIn and several others. It's mainly the LinkedIn China attack that I'm seeing on this one. But this is just sitting here. I've not seen the screen on it in probably 6 months, but I have it deployed here just as a real use test, real life test for myself. So
one of the things that I always like to talk about is like working with a vendor, right? And what that experience is like. So can you guys talk a little bit about like from the initial call, what that looks like to say maybe a POC to and then even like post sale, like somebody goes through all of this, how do you handle customer service moving forward?
So great questions, Matt. What we do offer is, and we call it our Blackfog 7-day ransomware assessment. Truly 7 days does not apply because we just don't have the bandwidth right now to do it in 7 days, but it's usually maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3. A really powerful experience. And in essence, it's a free proof of concept or proof of value. You get an introduction call. We help you, walk you through how to download the console, walk you through the console, put it all in training mode, and then you're given up to 25 licenses that you can deploy on anything that you want. And then we come back a week later because it's in training mode. We will come back within the week, have a follow-up call, look at the friction points, give you the report. We have a lot of reportability. We really have a real strong, mature report functionality. Give you the report, go over the console, show you what would have been blocked, whitelist what needs to be taken care of, fix those, and then put it in full production mode. Then we have a follow-up call, which would be the final call where, again, you're given the ransomware report. These are blockings that actually took place. We show them, see the value. The wow comment, is when people see either the first blockings on the web profiling or the web advertising, but also the ransomware report and the final view of the console is usually generates a lot of wow. And the three most common comments we hear are, wow, why didn't I think of this, and how do I invest in your company? So
my guess is that when you say wow, there could be other words in place of wow. But the wow moment.
Unfortunately, excited utterances is what we used to call
I know
those.
security people well. There's other words.
So, taking that one step further, Matt, the customer experience. So they come on, become a customer, and we have a customer success process that then we onboard them. A lot of people would call it a typical onboarding. We call it a customer success. Onboard them. Again, dependent on size of the agency or the department, the customer, the pace is driven accordingly. First quarter is at least one phone call per month, and then we're available obviously for help with a good support system that's very responsive. And then after the first quarter, it's one call per quarter for the first year, and then it stays at the one per quarter. Most of our customers literally come back and say, look, everything's fine. I don't need anything. We'll keep the quarterly call on the calendar just in case, but we're always here to help them. And because we're global, we have a real quick response time to anything that comes out to the network, as far as a support call or a question even.
So on that same thought process then, and one issue right now that a lot of companies are having is not enough people to do way too much work. So outside of like the deployment of the agent and ensuring that it's everywhere, like what other workload is there if someone were to implement Blackfog? Is it kind of hands off, or is there some upkeep and maintenance?
Kind of the beauty of it. Because everything's already happened. I like Doug's term. He calls it sleep well software. You're not going to, it's not going to alert you in the middle of the night like you need to do something or something bad's going to happen, right? Whatever it protects, whatever it's blocked has already occurred. We recommended a minimum, maybe after you have your Monday morning coffee on Monday, set a calendar appointment to take a look at the console and see if there's anything abnormal looking. Like we have a console that shows blockings by day of week, hour of day, country of destination. I would love to say country of origin. We don't care about that. And you can see, like, if you're an Eastern Standard Time 9 to 5 shop, and all of a sudden you're seeing blockings on Saturday mornings at dark 300, what's going on, right? That's weird. Right. Or you've never seen that blocking before, like, oh look, it's the same one I always see. It's I will not mention the vendor, laptop manufacturer from outside of the United States, who their PowerShell scripts are really poorly written and they're always blocked. So it's like, oh, that's weird. If it doesn't affect your user, just leave it alone. You see it all the time, no big deal. You see something new, that's weird. Maybe I need to look into it further. Maybe we were actually penetrated. We're protecting you. It's blocked. They're not exfiltrating data, but you might want to cleanse your environment, right? And we even offer a virtual CISO service for typically smaller customers, small, medium businesses, where we would monitor that for you and make recommendations. But so that there isn't a need to be in there hourly. You're not trying to, doing what so many people are, is obviously coming out of public safety space. We were used to the concept of how many video screens can someone watch at one time, right? Well, the science is 3 and for less than 15 minutes, and then that all just turns to fog, right? So you're using alerting to try to, point out to a human to look at things. Well, because there isn't a real-time response need, right, to be protected, you go in there and look when again, minimum I would recommend somebody's a week, but when you feel it's appropriate at the pace, maybe faster than that, is to see what happened, right? It's not what is happening, it's what's happened and what's been blocked. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fellas, I learned something today. I learned that data leaving your organization and being sold on the dark web, probably not a good thing.
Not really, but
yeah.
And if you care about that in your organization, then you might want to spend an hour or two talking with the guys over at Blackfog and see how you can stop that from happening. So Doug, David, we appreciate you guys being with us today. Excellent conversation, as I knew it was going to be. Everyone that's watching, I guess I can't necessarily say like and subscribe. Do they do that on the other platforms? I don't know, but we're everywhere now. So whatever the function is here, make sure that you're doing that so that you can, catch up on the next episode. 38. Wow, 38. Look at us. This was 37. I like it. Aaron, Lloyd, thank you guys. And again, Blackfog, appreciate you being with us this week. And we'll see everyone for episode 38.